The Dukes of Hazzard once captivated audiences with its heart-pounding car chases and the warm brotherhood that defined Hazzard County in the 1970s and 80s. But behind the scenes, many of the show's stars met tragic fates, sudden accidents and cruel illnesses that we could hardly imagine. Let's take a journey through the lives of these legends and honor the legacies they left behind. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Let's go! Denver Pyle as Jesse Duke. Denver Del Pyle was born on May 11, 1920, in Bethune, Colorado. At 59, he stepped into the role of Jesse Duke on The Dukes of Hazzard, 1979 to 1985. A protective, principled uncle who kept the Duke family on the right path amid the chaos of the South. With his deep voice, steady gaze, and all-American fatherly charm, Denver etched the image of Uncle Jesse into the hearts of millions across the country. But behind that legendary figure was a life full of struggles. Before fame, Denver dropped out of college, played drums for hire, worked on oil rigs in Oklahoma and Texas, and served in the Merchant Marine during World War II. When the war ended, he returned empty-handed and started over, landing countless small, uncredited roles in movies and TV shows. It wasn't until the 1960s that he gained recognition on The Andy Griffith Show, and as Frank Hamer in Bonnie and Clyde, 1967, before reaching his peak with the Dukes of Hazzard. In his 60s, while many were retiring, Denver Pyle was at the height of his fame, yet the spotlight couldn't erase the shadows of his private life. His first marriage to Marilee Carpenter ended in 1970, leaving him to raise two sons on his own. For years, he lived as a solitary man until he remarried at 63, finding companionship with Tippy Johnston, who stayed by his side until the end. What truly set Denver apart wasn't just his 5-decade acting career, but his remarkable business sense. In the 1960s, he boldly bought abandoned oil wells when oil was just $2 a barrel. By the 1980s, as oil prices soared and technology advanced, those investments turned him into a real millionaire, with a net worth estimated at $5 million near the end of his life. But lung cancer didn't spare him. On December 12, 1997, he was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Just 13 days later, on Christmas Day, December 25, 1997, Denver Pyle passed away at 77. He was laid to rest in an unmarked grave at Forreston Cemetery in Texas, beside his wife's parents, a simple ending for a man who had lived such an extraordinary life. James Best as Roscoe P. Coltrane. James Best, born Jewel Franklin Guy on July 26, 1926 in Kentucky, was 53 when he brought Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane to life, a hot-headed, comically bumbling lawman who was lovably annoying in The Dukes of Hazzard, 1979 to 1985. With his signature high-pitched voice and slapstick chase scenes, Best turned Roscoe from a side character into a pop culture icon. Yet behind that humorous facade was a man with a heart full of sorrow. James didn't grow up in the embrace of his birth parents. After his mother died young, he was adopted by another family in Indiana. That lonely childhood left emotional gaps that he carried throughout his life. Even after starting a family of his own, he admitted to struggling with a lifelong sense of not belonging. His marriages, too, bore the marks of hardship. After a short-lived first marriage, he wed his second wife, Joby Ayers, with whom he had 2 daughters. But the pressures of an intense filming schedule, career demands, and emotional distance led to their divorce in 1977. The breakup left him not just heartbroken, but also under financial strain, forcing him to throw himself deeper into work to balance fame with real-life responsibilities. It was during those difficult times that the Dukes of Hazzard became a beacon of hope. Even though Roscoe was a bit of a fool, Best gave the character a unique depth with his healing humor. Beyond acting, he taught drama classes, painted, wrote books, and did voice work for cartoons to rebuild his life after the shock of divorce. Those efforts not only saved him emotionally, but also gradually helped him rebuild his fortune with an estimated net worth of around $2 million. James Best passed away on April 6, 2015, from complications of pneumonia at the age of 88. He left this world quietly, but fans everywhere continue to remember him, not just as the bumbling Roscoe, but as a man who always managed to rise again with a smile. Sorell Book as Boss Hogg. Sorell Book was born on January 4, 1930, in Buffalo, New York. At 49, he became a television icon as Jefferson Davis Boss Hogg in The Dukes of Hazzard, the greedy, slippery politician who was always trying to outsmart the Duke boys but ended up making audiences laugh out loud. Beneath the fake fat suit and thick Southern accent, inspired by U.S. senators, Book turned Boss Hogg into a villain nobody could really hate, a beloved comedy figure on American television throughout the show's 7-year run, from 1979 to 1985. But behind the white suit was a man of remarkable depth and talent. Book was a language prodigy, fluent in at least 6 languages, including Russian, Japanese, Italian, and French. He graduated high school as valedictorian, finished Columbia University at just 19, earned a master's from Yale, and served 2 years as a counterintelligence officer during the Korean War. His stage and screen career spanned over 150 TV shows and 100 plays, from MASH and All in the Family to Mission, Impossible, and Columbo. On Broadway, he starred in Fiorello, proof of his rare versatility. Despite his thriving career, Book's personal life was marked by sadness. His marriage to Miranda Knickerbocker ended quietly in 1973, leaving him to raise their 2 children alone. He lived simply, gardening, fixing up his house, and called Boss Hogg despicable, though he always smiled when fans recognized him in public. Tragically, Sorell Book's final years were overshadowed by illness. He died of colorectal cancer on February 11, 1994, at age 64. His net worth at the time was estimated at about $3 million, a result of his steady, decades-long career. He was laid to rest at Hillside Memorial Park in Culver City, California, alongside many other famous Jewish artists. Waylon Jennings as the Ballader. Waylon Jennings, born June 15, 1937, was the legendary voice of the Dukes of Hazzard and the heart of the outlaw country movement, a rebellious sound that reshaped American country music. At 42, he appeared as the Ballader, the narrator and observer of everything that happened in Hazzard County, and he wrote the show's unforgettable theme song, Good Old Boys. But behind that smooth voice was a life that read like a sad ballad. His first brush with tragedy came with Buddy Holly, the man who changed his life. In 1959, Jennings narrowly avoided boarding the doomed plane that killed Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper. When Holly had joked, "I hope your bus freezes up," Jennings had replied, "I hope your plane crashes." It was meant as a joke, until the plane really did crash. Holly was gone. Jennings survived. That guilt haunted him forever. "I felt like I'd killed my friend with just a joke," he once said. Haunted by that invisible scar, Jennings threw himself into music as a way to escape. But in doing so, he fell into another trap: cocaine. In the 1970s and early 80s, he was spending around $1,500 a day on drugs, the equivalent of over $5,000 a day today, driving himself into bankruptcy, drowning in debt, and wrecking his body. The DEA came after him, and he narrowly avoided prosecution for intent to distribute. His marriage to singer Jessie Coulter was nearly destroyed by his addiction, but the birth of their son, Shooter, helped him find the strength to quit in 1984. After beating his addiction, Jennings reclaimed some of the light in his life. Though he never returned to the heights of the 1970s, his shows still packed in fans. He joined the Highwaymen with Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, and Chris Christopherson, released more albums, and became not just a survivor, but a living legend. From financial ruin and poor health Jennings slowly rebuilt his life. When he died in 2002, his net worth was estimated at around $7 million, a small number compared to the immense cultural legacy he left behind. Still, the damage was done. Years of smoking and drug use led to severe diabetes, and in 2001 he had to have his left foot amputated. Just months later, on February 13, 2002, Jennings passed away in his sleep at home in Chandler, Arizona, at 64. At his memorial, Jesse Coulter tearfully sang "Storms Never Last." Peggy Rhee as Lulu Hogg. Peggy Rhee was born on March 31, 1921, and became a familiar face on American TV, especially as Lulu Coltrane Hogg in The Dukes of Hazzard, 1979 to 1985. Between the ages of 58 and 64, she played Boss Hogg's kind-hearted wife, bringing a graceful contrast to the chaos of Hazzard County. With her gentle voice and warm presence, Rhea portrayed the classic Southern woman, kind, patient, and always bringing a smile to viewers. But few knew of the rocky road she traveled to find that late stability. As a young woman, she left UCLA to train as a secretary and soon found work behind the scenes in Hollywood. Her relationship with her first mentor, Kay Thompson, soured quickly over personal differences, ending her contract just as she was about to perform in New York. The setback derailed her budding career and cost her a rare support in an industry that wasn't kind to women who didn't fit the mold of leading ladies. Her private life was even quieter. She never married, had no children, and often lived alone, making her later years lonelier than most. She once said the hardest part wasn't losing out on roles, but coming home at night with no one to share her day with. That loneliness quietly wore at her, especially as her health declined and the phone stopped ringing with offers. Even at her peak, Rhea mostly played supporting roles, nannies, stepmothers, or comic aunts, and rarely got scripts that explored deep emotions. After The Waltons, she appeared in Step by Step, but even she admitted, they need a familiar face, not necessarily one they remember by name. The paychecks were steady but modest. By the time she died, Rhea's net worth was only about $1 million. Peggy Rhea passed away in 2011 at age 89 from heart failure. But in the hearts of Dukes of Hazzard fans, her gentle smile as Lulu lives on, a quiet presence that helped soften a loud and wild world. Nedra Volos as Ms. Emma Tisdale. Nedra Volos was born on June 18, 1908, and became a familiar face on American television playing Ms. Emma Tisdale in The Dukes of Hazzard. At 72, she brought to life the small, sprightly postmistress, adding a unique spark to the noisy world of the southern town. But in stark contrast to the laughter she inspired on screen, Nedra's real life was a long journey filled with quiet losses and challenges. Nedra's youth began in a family circus, where she was known as Baby Nedra and performed on stage from the time she could walk. But as she grew up, the stage lights dimmed, and she had to make ends meet through various odd jobs, from singing and radio work to vaudeville, doing whatever it took to survive in Depression-era America. It wasn't until nearly 50 that she finally began landing TV roles, slowly becoming a familiar face to audiences during the 1970s. After losing her beloved husband, Nedra raised their child alone through difficult times. As a widow, she shouldered not only financial struggles, but also the crushing loneliness that so many women in the entertainment world quietly endured. She once said that finishing a small acting gig and coming home to an empty house was the hardest part, because there was no one to tell about what had just happened. Though her career blossomed late, it was steady. She played Adelaide Brubaker on Different Strokes. The funny mother in Filthy Rich appeared in over 25 commercials and continued acting until age 88. Still, most of her roles were supporting parts, chatty, eccentric older women that helped her maintain a simple lifestyle. When Nedra passed away in 2003 due to complications from Alzheimer's, her net worth was estimated at just $500,000, Parley Bear as Doc Applebee. Parley Edward Bear was born on August 5, 1914, in Salt Lake City, Utah. At 65, he brought warmth and kindness to the Dukes of Hazzard as the gentle doctor. Doc Applebee, leaving a lasting impression with his distinctive voice, calm demeanor, and kindly face. But behind the image of that beloved doctor was a life filled with hidden pain and quiet sacrifice that few fans ever knew about. Parley's younger years were a struggle for survival, working as a circus manager, wild animal trainer, and radio announcer to get by during the Great Depression. When World War II broke out, he volunteered for the military and served 4 years in the Pacific Theater, returning home as a captain. But when he came back to America, the entertainment industry had changed, and he had to start over from scratch, with no money, no fame, just his determination and his gift for voice work. In 1946, he married acrobat Ernestine Clark, his one and only life partner. Though they were together for 54 years, they had no children, and their relationship at times grew tense under the weight of financial pressures and demanding careers that often kept them apart. Parley even worked as a zoo guide at one point to help cover expenses, and he didn't land stable TV roles until his 50s, with appearances on The Andy Griffith Show, Bewitched, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and Gomer Pyle, USMC. Despite more than 200 appearances on screen, Parley never had a lead role, and his income was only enough for a modest life. His biggest parts, like Doc Applebee, came in his later years. Near the end of his life, he even took on voiceover work in commercials to help pay for his wife's medical bills. When Ernestine passed away in 2000, Parley was devastated. Just 2 years later, on November 22, 2002, he died in a California nursing home after a stroke at age 88. He left behind a net worth of about $800,000. Don Pedro Collie as Sheriff Little. Don Pedro Collie was born on August 30, 1938, in Klamath Falls, Oregon. At 41, he appeared on The Dukes of Hazzard as Sheriff Ed Little, a stern but fair lawman who provided a sharp contrast in the otherwise chaotic southern town. But behind the spotlight, Collie's real life was a path filled with obstacles. In his youth, Don pursued sports and dreamed of representing the U.S. at the 1960 Olympics. But after failing to make the team, that dream ended, and he turned to architecture before fate steered him toward the stage in San Francisco. A tall, striking black man, he was often typecast into menacing roles, from criminals and henchmen to the scary black man so common in 1970s blaxploitation films. Hollywood at the time offered few opportunities for actors like him. Collie often had to settle for supporting roles or was pushed to the margins because of his race. Still, he persisted, building a reputation for resilience through appearances on iconic TV shows like Little House on the Prairie, Starsky and Hutch, Fantasy Island, and The A-Team. Though he never became a major star, he earned the respect of colleagues and loyal fans. His personal life remained largely private, perhaps because Collie chose to keep it that way, or perhaps because of scars he carried from military service or the racial prejudice he faced in the industry. He once said at a seminar, "We don't need lead roles. We need our stories told fairly." Maybe that's why he was content to stay out of the limelight, protecting his pride. In his final years, Collie fought cancer in silence, enduring pain alone in his hometown. He died on October 11, 2017, at age 79. His net worth was estimated at about $600,000, a modest sum for someone who appeared in dozens of films and TV shows. Christopher Mayer as Vance Duke. Christopher Mayer, born George Charles Mayer III on February 21, 1954, stepped into the spotlight at age 28 when he unexpectedly joined the hit show The Dukes of Hazzard. He played Vance Duke in the show's 5th season, temporarily replacing the original leads during a contract dispute between the producers and the main actors. Although he appeared in just 19 episodes, Mayer left a memorable mark, not because audiences instantly loved him, but because of the immense pressure he had to bear. Taking over for two beloved stars, Tom Wopat and John Schneider, was like stepping into a storm. Fans reacted harshly, the media questioned his presence, and Mayer faced a wave of doubt from the moment he began. That pressure didn't just impact his on-screen image. It left lasting scars on his career. When the season ended and the original stars returned, Mayer quietly stepped away from the limelight, struggling to find suitable roles throughout the 1990s. His personal life was equally turbulent. He went through 3 marriages to actresses Terry Copley, Eileen Davidson, and Shauna Sullivan, all of which ended in divorce. Though he had 3 daughters from these relationships, Mayer often faced long periods of loneliness and emotional wounds that weren't easily healed. Toward the end of his life, he became engaged to Katherine Irvine, a new ray of hope, but that happiness was short-lived. In 2011, Mayer was found dead at his home in Sherman Oaks, Los Angeles. The cause was listed as natural, but his passing at just 57, at a time when he was still trying to rebuild his life, left family and fans shocked. His net worth was estimated at around $1 million, a modest figure for someone who once dreamed of becoming a major star. Mel Tillis as Burl Tolliver. Mel Tillis, full name Lonnie Melvin Tillis, was born on August 8, 1932, in Florida. At 47, he appeared on The Dukes of Hazzard as Burl Tolliver, a charming and colorful supporting character who embodied the spirit of a down-to-earth Southern artist. But behind the laughter and sweet melodies he brought to the screen was a life filled with quiet struggles and pain. From childhood, Tillis lived with a stutter that began after a severe bout of malaria. While it didn't affect his singing, it was a major emotional hurdle in daily life. He once admitted that his stutter often made him feel insecure, especially in public. Instead of hiding, he learned to turn his vulnerability into a unique part of his identity, earning not just admiration for his voice, but affection for his authenticity on stage. Tillis's family life wasn't peaceful either. He went through 3 marriages and had 6 children, including famed singer Pam Tillis. Though she inherited his talent, their relationship wasn't always easy. Constant touring, managing his own theater in Branson, and running a radio station kept Tillis away from home, creating emotional distance that was hard to bridge. He often said that the more successful he became, the guiltier he felt about not being there for his kids. His career peaked in the 1970s with hits like Good Woman Blues and Coca-Cola Cowboy. But that success came at a price. Tillis once wrote 5 hit songs in a single week, a testament to the intense pressure he placed on himself. That relentless pace contributed to his declining health after 2016, leading to his death from respiratory failure on November 19, 2017, at age 85. Though he passed on with regret, Mel Tillis left behind a rich musical legacy and an estimated net worth of $20 million, mostly from songwriting royalties, his theater, and his radio station. Ernie Lively as Longstreet B. Davenport. Ernie Lively, born Ernest Wilson Brown, Jr. on January 29, 1947, in Baltimore, Maryland, took on the role of Longstreet B. Davenport in The Dukes of Hazzard at age 32, bringing depth and sincerity to a humble supporting character. Few knew that behind his warm smile was a former U.S. Marine carrying untold memories of war and the weight of a challenging journey in a ruthless entertainment industry. After his military service, Ernie entered Hollywood bearing both physical and emotional scars from the Vietnam War. Instead of healing, he threw himself into acting as a way to escape the nightmares. But life was far from easy. In the 1980s, while his career was still struggling to take off, he juggled financial pressure and the responsibilities of a large family, raising 3 stepchildren as his own, along with his 2 biological children, including future star Blake Lively. His marriage to Elaine, a talented manager, was strong, but not without its trials. Ernie was torn between being a devoted father and his dream of stepping out from the shadow of bit-part actor. Supporting a family of 7 on an unpredictable income left him exhausted and anxious. He took whatever TV roles he could get, from the Waltons to the West Wing, just to keep the bills paid. Despite dozens of film appearances, his name rarely made the posters, and his lifetime net worth was about $1 million. In 2003, tragedy struck when he suffered a massive heart attack, and every day afterward became a fight to stay alive. In 2013, he took a chance on an unproven stem cell therapy, hoping to live long enough to see his children grown. During this time, he appeared alongside Blake in The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, one of the few moments when he got to share the screen as her real-life father. Though his health kept deteriorating, Ernie remained dedicated to his craft, even directing Blake's first film, Sandman, as a final gift before it was too late. On June 3, 2021, Ernie Lively died of heart complications at 74, leaving behind a famous family and the poignant story of a man who spent his life behind the spotlight. Bob Hastings as Barnes. Bob Hastings was born on April 18, 1925, and joined the Dukes of Hazzard at age 54 as Barnes, a minor character who nonetheless left a memorable impression. But behind the scenes, his real life was a challenging journey marked by post-war stress and quiet sacrifices that few ever knew. Before finding fame, Hastings served as a navigator aboard B-29 bombers in the U.S. Army Air Forces during World War II. Returning from the battlefield, he threw himself into radio work, then moved into television. But the entertainment world was far from easy. As an actor known mostly for supporting roles, Hastings struggled to earn a steady income, taking on everything from commercials to voice acting just to support his family. His 66-year marriage to Joan Rice was his greatest source of strength, but it wasn't without its pressures. With 4 children and nearly 3 generations under one roof, Hastings always felt the need to keep working, no matter his age. Even as his health declined in the 2000s, he continued to lend his voice to animated shows and video games, most notably as Commissioner James Gordon in the DC animated universe. That tireless work ethic saw him leave behind a modest net worth of about $700,000 at the time of his passing. In 2014, at age 89, Bob Hastings died after a long battle with prostate cancer. He passed away surrounded by family, leaving behind a humble yet honorable legacy. Dick Sargent as Sheriff Grady Bird. Dick Sargent, born Richard Stanford Cox on April 19, 1930, joined the Dukes of Hazzard at age 49 as Sheriff Grady Bird. Though it was only a brief supporting role, Sargent left his mark with a blend of authority and his own brand of understated humor. But behind that familiar face was a life filled with conflict, inner struggles, and silent pain. Born into a family with deep Hollywood roots, Sargent was expected to follow in his parents' footsteps. But rather than enjoying a smooth path, he battled personal demons from early on. After replacing Dick York as Darren Stevens on Bewitched, the role brought him fame, but also trapped him in the image of the perfect husband, a painful irony for a man trying to hide his true sexuality. As a gay man in an unforgiving era, Sargent lived in silence, masking his identity with public relationships and enduring relentless psychological strain for decades. The pain didn't end with inner conflict. In 1979, his longtime partner died of a brain hemorrhage, a loss that nearly broke him. Though he later found companionship with Albert Williams, the scars of that first loss never fully healed. When Sargent publicly came out in 1991, already battling prostate cancer, he called himself a role model against the tide of history, a defiant statement to an industry that had long rejected his true self. Sargent was active in AIDS awareness, Special Olympics, and anti-discrimination efforts, but he admitted that after Bewitched, significant roles dried up. Though he worked steadily in guest spots on various shows, the glory days never returned. His quiet battle with illness and the distance he felt from the industry left him living simply in his final years, with a net worth of about $1 million, hardly reflective of the sacrifices he made for his art and his community. On July 8, 1994, Dick Sargent passed away at age 64. His ashes were scattered after a simple memorial, true to the way he lived, quietly, persistently, and bravely facing the truth, even when it meant standing alone. Despite the shadows in his life, Dick Sargent remains a symbol of courage, a man who dared to be himself in a world not yet ready to listen. The journey of the Dukes of Hazzard isn't just about fond memories. It's also the story of stars who are no longer with us, leaving behind timeless legacies. Which character did you love most from the show? Share your memories in the comments and honor them by liking and subscribing to discover more emotional stories from the world of cinema.